Comet The Colt of Steel, Chapter 4 Homeworld, Sweet Homeworld. The sun set gracefully over the orchard, signaling the end of a very long and very interesting day. Pa was overcome with hysterical relief when he'd learned about how I'd saved Granny Smith. I'd never seen a grown stallion cry so hard before. Granny eventually managed to calm him down, but not after he apologized profusely for not safety-proofing the cellar for her. Applejack and Big Mac congratulated me for saving the day and complimented me on getting my cutie mark, even though they were understandably skeptical about my powers. Apple Bloom on the other hoof was quick to come to my defense, going into great detail about everything I did at school today. They just rolled their eyes at her. After all that drama, I needed to lie down. There's only so much a 5-year-old colt can take in one day. As I looked up at my bedroom ceiling, my mind began to race back to everything that happened today. I was faster, stronger, and more perceptive than any colt my age ought to be, and I was the first in my class to earn my cutie mark, on top of all that. I wasn't exactly sure what I thought I'd be when I grew up, let alone at 5 years old. I wasn't that complicated of a kid to figure out. I played with my siblings and the other kids in town whenever I got a chance. Played most of the usual games other colts and fillies did. Tag, hide and seek, catch, those sorts of things. I always figured I'd get my cutie mark for something to do with apples and become a farmer like Pa. Now, well, to be honest, I didn't know what was going to happen now. I always felt different from my siblings since I was adopted. I didn't remember Ma very well. She died when I was still a foal, but the apples already treated me as one of the family. I looked back at my cutie mark, a red shooting star emblazoned inside a diamond shield. It was about as far away from apple farming as you could imagine. A kid who didn't do what they could think they were destined to be as an astronomer or an equestronaut, but a colt who could probably outrun a train and rip a heavy cellar door off its hinges like me would be understandably confused.
"Apple Comet, dinner's ready!"
Applejack hollered from downstairs. Granny did promise me an extra large piece of pie as thanks. You know, maybe this whole strange powers thing could just wait a little longer. Dinner was pretty average, for the most part, an apple, a hay casserole with carrots and peas, and apple pie for dessert. Pa led the family in the blessing to Princess Celestia, as usual, and then we dug in. After a hectic day like today, it was a chance to return to a semblance of normalcy. Till I bit the tines off my stainless steel fork. The entire room went quiet, and every pony just looked at the stainless steel fork I'd bitten in half. Applejack finally broke the silence.
"So, Apple Bloom, what did you say happened at school again today?" "Oh, so now y'all believe me!"
Apple Bloom replied with an eye roll and snark.
Sorry?"
I said sheepishly. Well, so much for a normal family dinner.
"It's okay, I'll get you another fork,"
Granny Smith said as she got up from the table.
"Ma,"
Pa said, turning to face Granny.
"I think it's time we show him." "Show what, Pa?"
I asked, a bit puzzled. He turned over to face me and said,
"I'll show you after dinner."
Night had fallen by the time dinner was finished. I had managed to clean my plate without breaking any more forks, although it took longer than usual since I had to be more careful not to put too much strength into it. After the table was cleared and the dishes cleaned, Pa led us out to the barn. I watched silently as he lifted the bar off the front door and slowly slid it open. His face looked weary, as if expected this day would come for a long time. Finally, Pa slid the door aside and ushered us into the barn. "I was hoping to wait till y'all was a little older to show you this," he said as he led us to his workshop in the back left corner of the barn. "But after what happened today, I think y'all deserve to know the truth."
"The truth about what, Pa?"
I asked, puzzled, and Pa sighed as he reached out for the light cord. With the room illuminating, I could get a better view of the workshop. At first glance, nothing seemed too out of the ordinary, just racks covered in tools lining the walls, and the workbench was coated with a thin layer of sawdust and a shelf filled with paint cans and brushes next to the door. However, there was something covering something in a faded blue tarp laying on something in the back corner of the room. You know how some foals are found on doorsteps and baskets? Pa said as he walked over to the tarp. Well, your ma and I found you inside this. With a tug of his mouth, he pulled off the tarp, revealing the last thing I ever expected to find in a barn. It was a long, cylindrical-shaped object that honestly looked like some pony had stuck wings and fins on a silo. 3 rocket engines stuck out of the back, and a large hatch door lay shut in the center. Slowly, I walked over to it, my eyes taking in every detail. I ran my hoof along the surface, despite having it being covered in dust at some point. It felt smooth. Smooth to the touch.
What is it, Pa?
I asked.
Some kind of silo or something?
He looked down at me and said,
I'm not much of a poet, so I'll make the story quick. About 5 years ago, during a big meteor shower, we had one stray off course and crash into the orchard.
As he told his story, he reached over to a lever on the hatch.
When your ma and I went out to see what happened and, well, what landed, we found you inside this.
With a click, the hatch on the silo opens. The inside looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. A small seat sat in the center with various panels and instruments displaying surrounding it.
This can't be right. This can't be right. Are you trying to tell me I'm from outer space or something?
I stammered. This couldn't be happening. This had to be either a bad dream I was having or just, I don't know, an elaborate prank. Pa just smiled at me and walked over to his workbench. He reached into one of the top drawers and took a small wooden box.
Well, I'm not jumping to any conclusions, but I think you'd better take a look at this,
he said as he handed me the box. I opened the lid and my jaw dropped. Lying there was a silver chain and pendant of a comet inside of a shield. It was exactly like my cutie mark.
Y'all were wearing that when we found you. Figured we'd hold on to it until you were ready to know the truth,
Pa told me as he straightened his hat.
And there's something else for you too.
Pa reached down and opened up a drawer on the bottom of the workbench. He pulled out a small, thin, cylindrical-shaped crystal.
I'd never been much for geology, but I knew there was something special about this moment I saw it. Could never figure out what it was, though. Even took it to a friend of mine who owns a rock farm. He said that he never seen anything like it.
He handed it over to me, and it felt strangely warm in my hoof, almost as if it were alive. As if by my touch, lines of light began to dance across the surface of the crystal, slowly coming together to form the shape of a comet's tail. Suddenly, the comet flew from the surface of the jewel straight for me, and I shielded my face with my foreleg as the comet erupted in a blinding flash of light. As the light faded, I felt my vision slowly returning to me, and as I looked around, I realized that I was no longer in the barn with Pa and the others. Instead, I was in a room I'd never seen before. From what I could gather, it appeared to be a living room of sorts, but the style and the furniture, it was nothing like I'd ever seen before.
Pa? Granny? Mac? Applejack? Applebloom? Is anyone here?
No answer. That wasn't good. Okay. I just need to calm down. I was alone in a strange house. I don't know how I got in here or how to get home for that matter.
Wait a minute. There was something I could do though. Nothing like a little x-ray vision wouldn't fix. All I had to do was focus on the nearest door and nothing happened.
Huh. Yeah, that's strange. While I'd been seeing through walls for at least a month, it wasn't until today that I realized I was the one doing it. I quickly checked the walls and the ceiling. Nothing. It was just a wall.
I tried the floor, and the same thing. Something was wrong. I took a look around the room and spotted a strange sculpture sitting on the glass table in the center of the room. And strangely, the table didn't seem to make contact with the floor, but rather floated a few inches off the floor. I picked up the sculpture and tried to pull it apart. And nothing. I tried harder, pulling with more force this time, but the sculpture stood firm. I gave it one last go, using as much force as, well, as much as my 5-year-old body could muster, but instead of pulling it apart as I'd done with the cellar door, the sculpture remained intact. In frustration, I threw it against the nearby window where it struck with a satisfying clunk, but it wasn't even scratched. Whatever that thing was made out of, I could not break it. I decided it was best to put it back before someone found it this way. I went over to the window and was awestruck by just what I saw. A massive Arcadian city of towering marble and glass spires and gigantic skyways stretched out before me. Behind them, I could make out a range of jeweled mountains and lush green forests, and shining high above the sky was an enormous red sun, many times the size of Celestia's. Wherever I was, one thing was certain. I wasn't in Ponyville anymore.
Hello? Is Sunny Pony here? Where am I?
You are on Colton, my son, a voice answered, and I turned around to see 2 ponies, a stallion and a mare standing behind me. The stallion was an earth pony, his coat was a platinum gray, and his mane was a bright sheen of silver. He wore a strange blue and red costume with a red cape and a golden headband. Emblazoned on his chest was the symbol of a red and gold comet. The same symbol as my cutie mark. The mare was also an earth pony, and her coat was snow white and her mane was a deep, dark blue. Her eyes were the same color as mine, and she wore a long, flowing blue dress with a vibrant golden cape that flowed behind, and around her neck she wore the same pendant of a shooting star.
Who are you?
I asked, taking several steps back. I didn't know them, and I didn't trust them.
Greetings, Como. I am Lauren,
the mare answered. And I am Javel, the stallion said. We are your parents. And now my mind was completely blown.
You're my parents? But where did you come from, and how did I get here? This was your home, Kamal,
Lauren said as she gestured over to the window.
And this was Colton, our homeworld. Kamal? Colton?
I asked her, puzzled.
Look, I have no idea in Equestria what you're talking about. My name is Apple Comet. I live on a farm outside Ponyville on planet Equus, where I'm probably still in bed, and this is just a crazy dream I'm having,
I said as I bolted for the door to my right. I stopped in my tracks when I realized the door had no knob, no handle to speak of. I can assure you, this is no dream you are having, my son, Javel said as he placed his hoof on a panel next to the door. It opened effortlessly with a hiss, revealing a kitchen like none I had ever seen. From floor to ceiling, it was virtually spotless. Automated forelegs hung from the ceiling and sat on the corner. A revolving door refrigerator sat in the corner, and a strange bubble top appliance that somewhat resembled a stove. From end to end, the entire room looked like a cooking assembly line. Oh, young Master Kamal, so good to finally see you at last. A strange golden machine levitated out from behind the counter. Its body resembled that of a metal pony that was missing its hind legs. Instead, its lower barrel seemed to float above the floor. Its forelegs were long and skinny. Its head was devoid of any facial features, save for a single glowing screen resembling a pair of swim goggles and a filter where its mouth should have been. My, you've certainly grown, it said as a line danced across its eyes as it spoke. And I screamed. I screamed. I immediately turned tail and ran for the door, only to crash face first into Lauren.
I see you've met Carax,
Lauren giggled as she helped me off the floor.
Don't worry. He doesn't bite.
Quite right, Lady Lauren. My designers render me incapable of any mastication whatsoever. I exist only to serve, or at least I did. If any of this was real, young master, I would have been glad to have made something for you if you were hungry.
Wait a minute. What do you mean, if this was real?
I said, and my suspicion was piqued. I wanted some answers. I wanted them now. What Karax is trying to say is that none of what you see here is real, Javel answered as he walked in. Only a memory, being played back into your mind. I'll just be going now, the robot said as the kitchen began to slowly fade away, replaced by the vastness of space. I found myself overtaken by weightlessness, drifting past stars, drifting past comets, meteors, towards a glowing green planet. Everything you've seen here, including your mother. Karax and I, we were destroyed long ago in a great cataclysm. The planet began to glow brighter and brighter. Giant eruptions of bright green ash shot high into the clouds, and enormous tremors shook the planet to its core. I held my hoof over my eyes as the planet's aura grew brighter and brighter until it finally exploded in a tremendous green nova. When the light faded, only a bright green asteroid belt just remained. My heart was pounding as if I had just ran a marathon, as I felt my stomach sink like a stone. I wanted to keep telling myself that this was all just a crazy dream. I wanted to shout it from the roof of the barn at this point. But the rush of adrenaline flowing through me told me I was wide awake. We sent you to Equus in a rocket to save your life. As of this recording, you are the sole survivor of Colton. I felt my blood run cold as he said those last words. Slowly, remains of Colton just faded away. I was back in the living room again. From your activation of this recording, I am to assume correctly that your powers are beginning to manifest.
How do you know about that?
I stammered. I'm a scientist, son. It's my business to know things, he said with a grin. Even though you were raised by equestrians, you're not one of them. Your Coltonian body allows you to absorb energy from a star. The light of Equus's yellow sun will grant you abilities more powerful than any equestrian has ever had. Lauren knelt to me and ran her hoof through my mane. Listen to me, Kamal. Promise us that you will never use your powers to harm. The road ahead for you will not be easy. There will be many that will fear you, those that want to destroy you, but there will also be those who will come to believe in you.
Wait, who wants to destroy me? I haven't done anything wrong. I'm just a colt.
Before I could ask any more, Lauren pulled me into a hug.
Hush now, my son. Hush.
She reassured me.
I understand this is all very sudden for you, but do not despair. We will be right here, wherever and whenever you need us. But how?
I asked her.
You're not even real!
Lauren smiled and released me, holding her hoof out as she stood up to reveal the memory crystal thing, whatever she called it.
Contained within this memory crystal is the collected memories of both your father and me, along with all of Colton's knowledge, history, and its culture.
She spoke.
All you need to do is hold this crystal and clear your mind.
Now go, my son. Remember the heritage you carry, and make us proud, Javel said as he slowly began to fade away.
Remember that we love you with all our hearts,
Lauren said as she too began to disappear. I felt my head begin to spin as the house was engulfed in the same bright light from earlier.